Well, hello, inclusive cannabis community and friends. This is Philip _ coming at you with another great interview. Super excited to have our next guest come forward. She currently is a cannabis education and patients advocate within the state of Michigan, as well as a business owner. Her name is Angie Roullier, and she has an extensive knowledge within the cannabis industry, and certainly has her own personal story regarding cannabis and why she's become such a passionate advocate within the industry. So without further ado, I want to welcome Angie Roullier.
Hi, Philip. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Angie, for being here. We're excited to be talking to you. And just to kind of give us some time to get to know you a little bit more, can you provide any details about just yourself and where you're from?
Oh, well, I'm born and raised Michigan, loud and proud, and in that order. Michigan has actually had a caregiver program since 2008. I have been in the Michigan cannabis industry since 2010. So I have been doing this for more than a minute on both sides of the fence, both the gray market and the regulated market.
Wonderful. And you hold some really compelling titles from your experience. Can you share a little bit more about what you do specifically as a patient advocate?
So I have an extreme passion for people using cannabis as medication. I'm a very firm believer in freedom of choice when it comes to the medications that you put into your body and the personal responsibility in educating yourself on those medications, whether they're prescribed by a doctor or whether you find them, holistically, anything from cannabis to, say peppermint for headaches. I believe it is upon the individual person to do the research to know what you are putting into your body. And I have found that a lot of this information, especially when it comes to cannabis, can be overwhelming. It could be a bit much. So I really do my best to put it in layman's terms and how it relates to us on a daily basis, and taking that science and giving it in a way to people to where they can make their own educated decisions for themselves.
Wonderful. And as you mentioned, it is a lot, especially for new people kind of coming in, or even people that due to stigma, other reasons, never really got a chance to utilize the medicinal benefits of cannabis. And I know that you have a very personal story that has really kind of connected you to the industry. Would you be able to share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, for sure. So I am a muscular dystrophy patient. So back in the day, anybody who remembers the Jerry Lewis telethon, I am a Jerry's kid. I was diagnosed at 16, 17, somewhere in there. And of course, the norm, they just throw pills at you. By the time I hit mid-30s, my kidneys were starting to shut down. And I actually had found that unacceptable when my neurologist said, it's to be expected. No, absolutely not. I found myself entirely too young to be dealing with such a difficult problem. Yeah. Now, myself personally have been partaking in cannabis recreationally for a very long time. So the fact that all of a sudden it was good for me, I kind of called BS on it. There was absolutely no way that something that I enjoyed recreationally was going to be good for me medicinally as well. Yeah. But being put in the situation that I was in my early 30s, I did some research. I grabbed myself up a caregiver to grow my plants for me because I personally can kill a cactus, and I have absolutely no business growing anything. It's amazing that my daughter thrives. So he started growing me individual strains to help with the spasticity and the nerve damage and things of that nature. And I slowly began to wean myself off of the pharmaceuticals that were doing such damage to my internal organs. Took a minute. It definitely did not happen overnight. I would say it took almost close to 2 years. And today I sit in front of you and I don't even take Motrin.
Wow.
Yeah. So it definitely, it worked wonders for me. I can't stress enough, please, please, please do not stop taking your pills without your doctor's permission. This is in no way, shape, or form free passage for you to go and do this. This is something that I did for myself personally and educated myself every step of the way to do so.
Wonderful. Thank you for prefacing that too, because some will always take,
Always. Yes.
And I think it certainly speaks more about you and really the power that you retained as a patient to say, no, I'm not going to settle for someone being okay with me having a reduced experience of life because this is the only way of healing that they're aware of.
Correct.
And, you know, and actually kind of leaning into that a little bit more, what misconceptions do you feel are out there when it comes to looking at cannabis from a medicinal standpoint?
From a, say, medical doctor perspective, they're skittish. Because they feel they're extremely liable. So they would rather not talk about it at all. They like the argument that there isn't enough research. Again, I'm going to call BS on that. There's almost 20,000 different research papers out there and more every day. I have found with the neurologist and some of the doctors that I have dealt with who take this approach, they're a little bit closed-minded in the fact that they're only looking at research from this country. We have been on lockdown for so long, and we still kind of are when it comes to doing our own research. We need to look at other countries that have been doing this for quite some time. For example, Israel has been doing it since the 70s. So those are the research papers that you really need to look at. When it comes from a patient's standpoint, unfortunately, they feel that it could be a cure-all. That is absolutely not the case. I have helped and seen thousands of patients over the last decade working in the cannabis industry. I have seen it do absolute wonders for some. I have seen it do absolutely nothing for others. Okay, this is not a cure-all. For example, I had a sweet little old lady, Shirley, who came in and who had been taking Percocet for 30 years. And she thought that topical was going to replace her Percocet. Oh. Okay, now bless your heart, Shirley, absolutely not. Okay. And this is where I come in and I do my education and I explain to them why your topical isn't going to work in the way that your Percocet works. So you do have to absolutely take cannabis with a grain of salt and your expectations of what it can do for you and your disabilities.
Absolutely, yeah. And you talk about the importance of education and educating yourself. Can you talk a little bit more about kind of how you grew your experience as well? And also for people who are new, maybe what are some areas or different resources that people can use to educate themselves as, on the braces, I'm sorry, on the medicinal side?
You're good, you're good. It's, again, and it can be overwhelming because, I mean, we're talking plant science here, okay? Not every single one of us can pick up a research paper from a plant scientist and be able to read it like a Dr. Seuss book. I mean, it just does not come naturally to so many of us, and that's where we get a little overwhelmed. It gets a little scary. So there are some great resources out there. There is projectcbd.org. There's American for Safe Access. And myself personally, I am working on just hacking my own personal website filled with all of the research that I've been able to get my hands on. And I've broken it down by ailment. There's no point in falling down the rabbit hole for, say, for example, for tumors if you have Parkinson's. So I'm really doing my best to try and make this as easy to navigate as possible. And then, you know, of course, if you have questions, you know, you can always ask me. And if I don't know, I will go find somebody far smarter than me to explain it to me. Then I can come back and explain it to the patient.
I think you find that person would be hard, even though they may exist, because you have such a strong knowledge. How did you get started within the cannabis industry? How did your career start?
Again, my health was, you know, pretty much in the toilet, along with my career. I was a realtor for 20 years. So we're talking just post 2008, and we all know what that did to the real estate market, and it was very ho-hum and very disconcerting. So I figured, you know, what the hell, if I'm going to start over, I might as well start over doing something that I love to do. And I literally started at the bones. I mean, I was a receptionist at a certification center, and then I was a receptionist at a dispensary, and then a bud tender, and then a manager. And I mean, I just kept crawling. And anytime, you know, lab results would come back, I had a zillion questions. I'm like a 4-year-old at bedtime with all the questions that I have when it comes to cannabis. And to this day, I keep asking these questions, and I know people kind of laugh at me when I say that LinkedIn is my go-to. But where else can you get the people who make rolling papers and the PhD from, you know, Israel, who has been working with this plant for the last 30 years, all on the same page?
Wow.
It's a beautiful resource, and I can literally put a question out there, and I have all different walks of life giving their 2 cents and their 10 cents. And, you know, we definitely come to some sort of an agreement of how, you know, it should be interacted with.
It's fantastic. I also want to recognize you for being a pioneer as a woman within the industry. Wanted to know, for those that, and also because of Women's Month, or at least the time that we're recording this, it's March for Women's Month, wanted to ask your opinion about any advice that you would give to other women entrepreneurs or professionals looking to get into the industry.
Oh, absolutely, all day. But it's not easy. It isn't, and that, I don't think that has anything to do with whether you're male or female. I think that has to do with the fact that this industry is so new. The industry doesn't know what it's doing. The industry doesn't know what it needs, except for that it needs everything. I was at a meeting, I'd have to say probably about 1.5 years ago. It was a National Cannabis Industry Association meeting. And I had a woman walk up to me, and she kind of tugged on my shoulder, and she goes, "Do you realize that we're the only 2 women in the room?" And I kind of looked up and I looked around, and I said, to be honest with you, it didn't even dawn on me. You can't come at this with a him versus she. This is one of those industries that we're all supposed to be in this together. So of course, there's always going to be a lot of, she didn't get hired because she's a female. And there's also going to be a lot of, she got hired because she was a female. To me, both of them are pretty gross. And I would really like to avoid both of them, and just like to be considered a human in cannabis.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And you have such a passion. Of course, you share from your own personal story, but in terms of continuing that, like, what continues to keep you passionate as you continue to help patients and make a difference within your state?
Oh, just to see these results. I mean, it is absolutely amazing. I mean, I've seen nonverbal autistic children speak. I have seen, you know, I have a patient who is a stage 4 leukemia patient who is just, her passion and her lust for life is just, it's so inspiring. And to learn every day what this plant can do and what it can't do, and how many of these pharmaceuticals can actually be replaced with plant medicine. Not necessarily even just cannabis, but just learning more and more. I'm a firm believer everything that we need to cure ourselves and to help ourselves is on this planet. We just need government to kind of get out of the way and let us do our research and figure out where the safe levels are at and what can be used for what.
Wonderful. Yeah. It feels like sometimes government's always like a step behind, you know, but it's great that you're someone that's advocating, because I'm actually talking to other people that are like either on the lobbying side too, again, just trying to get the laws changed, the perception changed.
Let us look.
Yeah.
Just let us look. That's all we're asking, you know, for sure.
And when it comes to legalization, just because there have been so many changes and you've seen the changes happen within your career, can you talk about what those changes have been positively, if there's any negatives with that, or just overall what they've done, or how you've had to maybe shift or change within your own career with those changes?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely different, you know, having mother hen in the house for sure. But some good has really come from it. One of my favorites is the testing. Before, you just had absolutely no idea what you were getting. There was no even keel. I mean, you hear the horror stories of, you know, somebody having a, you know, medicated gingerbread man and them thinking they can only eat the leg and they'll be cool. Well, come to find out all the medicine was in the leg, you know, and now they're a mess. So things like that. I mean, government really did a good job with their testing. I would like to see them take it a little bit farther and require terpene testing, just because terpenes are medicinal and they have such a great influence on how cannabis works in the body. And there can also be allergens. I mean, pinene is an allergen. So think of all the yellow stuff that falls about this time of year from the pine trees and everybody's faces swell. Pinene can also be found in cannabis. So maybe you don't want to be smoking on that if you're allergic to it, you know, any other time. So there are, I believe valid reasons to, increase the testing, and they have that transparency in testing. Every single consumer should be allowed to look up that product and see those test results, and to see what kind of residual solvents are left behind, or which terpenes are in it, or things like that. Again, the more information you've got, the more of an educated opinion you can have when you treat yourself.
Absolutely. I think that one of the main things I'm taking away just from our conversation is the importance of educating yourself and really knowing what you're putting in your body, because your body is important, it's sacred, it has to function. And sometimes we can look at cannabis as just one umbrella and it all just does just this one thing. But it's so many different areas that it can work for you depending on what you need. That's why that education is important, consulting with your medical professionals as well. But again, going to credible sources and finding that information out for yourself, so that way you're not doing your body any harm.
Well, you have to be proactive. I mean, absolutely. Even when it comes to drug interactions, and I can't stress that enough. I have gone and spoken at American houses and assisted living and retirement homes, specifically to tell them, stop buying your CBD at gas stations. You're taking this stuff to get better, not to feel worse.
Yeah.
And with these drug interactions, you really have to be careful. I mean, cannabis interacts almost like there's drugs out there that have a grapefruit warning. And I had asked my own personal doctor, who recently wanted to put me on something, and I asked about the grapefruit warning. She said there wasn't. And of course, me not taking my own advice, I went and I filled the script. I took one, Philip. I was violently ill, sick as a dog. And I looked at that bottle, and right there in bold letters was grapefruit warning, and I kind of kicked myself for it. But I mean, they are absolutely no joke. You got to be on top of it. You really do.
Yeah, it's important for your own health, and there's so many benefits, but only when done right and done in an informed manner.
For sure.
Well, I want to actually leave a couple of final thoughts in terms of giving you the floor. Anything that you want to share or leave with our viewers today?
Again, just, please, overeducate yourself on this stuff. If you don't know, say you don't know. There's a lot of misinformation that runs around out there. And you do have to be careful. You can't just, again, hand grandma a bottle of CBD that she bought at the Amoco station and tell her to, take 4 full droppers of it and she'll be fine. That's it's absolutely not the case. And it actually hurts us that are actually trying to bring this to light. The good, the bad, the ugly. You need to know what's going on with it. You absolutely do. And, and also on a, personal note, don't fault those that have been doing this recreationally. It doesn't mean that we don't know what we're talking about when it comes to using this plant medicinally. I firmly believe that you can do both. It's not a split to where you're either rec or you're either med. You can absolutely do both.
Oh, that's fantastic advice. Also, wanted to give you some space if you wanted to share any upcoming events. This is the shameless plug section of the interview. So anything that you have going on, any things that you want to leave, social media, any ways that you want people to reach out if they have questions, whatever you want to share, feel free.
Yeah. I'd have to say I'm pretty proud of my my LinkedIn. I treat it, as a child, and try to tend to it. And so you can check me out there. You can check out my site, balancebranches.com. Again, I'm always adding new research to it. I would really like for it to be a place where people can go and just check out the research for their own. Instead of getting, a little bit overwhelmed, I'm hoping to put it all in one spot for people to utilize. And I just want to give a shout out to the city of Ann Arbor. We actually have our 50th anniversary for the Hash Bash coming up. And right. So that's kind of a big deal. It is.
Oh, that sounds like it's going to be a blast.
So yeah, I mean, in the Hash Bash, I mean, it does go back to why this all started. This is about compassion. This is about, a plant. This is about, unity. This is about education.
Yeah, and you've done all of those things within this interview. I graciously want to thank you again, Angie, for being with us and sharing your story and sharing your experience and expertise. I learned so much. I hope everyone out there learned a ton. In the actual description of this post, you'll find Angie's website and her information there. So feel free to check her out. Go to her website, learn some really great resources and information. And again, Angie, I want to thank you so much for speaking, and I hope to have you back again soon.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much, Philip, for having me.
No problem. Thank you.